Elizabeth II once said that wearing the Imperial State crown could break your neck if you looked down. She wasn't exaggerating. There's a category of royal jewellery that never photographs well in natural light. Not because the stones are flawed or the craftsmanship is poor, but because these pieces were never designed to exist outside the controlled environment of ceremony. They belong to ballrooms lit by chandeliers, to processions filmed from a distance, to state occasions where no one gets close enough to notice the weight pressing into a collarbone, or the rigid frame that prevents a natural turn of the head. Strip away the theatre, remove the formal context, and what remains are objects that seem to resist the bodies wearing them. They're uncomfortable in the most literal sense, physically demanding, structurally unforgiving, designed for display rather than human anatomy. This isn't about jewels that look wrong in daylight. This is about pieces that feel wrong anywhere outside their intended ceremonial frame. Objects engineered for ritual, constructed for spectacle, built to communicate power at the precise cost of comfort. The British Royal Collection holds dozens of these pieces. So do the vaults of continental Europe. And their persistence, their continued use despite obvious physical strain, reveals something about what monarchy demands of the bodies that perform it. If that discomfort interests you, you'll find more of it here. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and turn on notifications. This channel is about the details you're never meant to see up close. The Imperial State crown weighs 1 kilogram, 99 grams. That precision matters. It's not an approximate weight or an estimate from historical records. It's the documented mass of 2,868 diamonds, 17 sapphires, 11 emeralds, 269 pearls, and 4 rubies mounted in a silver frame with an interior structure of steel and gold. The monarch who wears it can feel that weight distributed across the crown of the skull, pressing down through the neck, held in place by the sheer density of metal and stone. Charles III wore it for less than an hour during his coronation. His mother wore it for the journey back from Westminster Abbey in 1953, and then annually for the state opening of Parliament, a ceremony that requires sitting motionless while reading a speech written by others. The crown doesn't allow for natural movement. Tilt the head too far forward, and the weight shifts dangerously. Turn too quickly, and the momentum follows a fraction of a second late. Elizabeth II once remarked that looking down while wearing it could break your neck. The comment was delivered lightly, but the physics confirm it. The centre of gravity sits high, and the human neck wasn't designed to balance that kind of load while maintaining the posture required of ceremonial dignity. This is jewellery that exists exclusively for the moment it's being observed. Outside the formal context, outside the procession, the throne, the cameras positioned at precise angles, it becomes almost absurd. An object so heavy it limits basic movement, worn for such brief intervals that its primary function is symbolic rather than decorative. The Imperial State crown works only when distance, tradition, and ceremony create the necessary frame. Anywhere else, it's simply an expensive burden. Some tiaras were built like walls. They weren't meant to move with you. Queen Alexandra's Kokoshnik tiara follows the architectural logic of its Russian origin. The frame sits upright like a wall across the forehead, rigid and unmoving, styled after the traditional Russian headdress that gave it its name. There's no flex in the structure. The 488 diamonds are set in platinum and silver, arranged in vertical rows that rise to a centered peak. It's a fortress of a tiara, built with the engineering priorities of late 19th century Imperial Russia, where jewellery announced status through sheer immovable presence. The design means it can't adjust to the shape of the head wearing it. It doesn't curve or give. The wearer's head must conform to it, held at a specific angle that maintains the vertical lines. Lower the chin and the geometry collapses visually. Tilt too far back, and the weight distribution becomes unstable. Alexandra wore it frequently, but always for formal events where remaining still was part of the protocol. Her granddaughter, Elizabeth II, wore it occasionally, though never with the frequency she wore lighter, more flexible tiaras. When Kate, Princess of Wales, wore it in 2023, the photographs captured the same tension visible in century-old portraits, a posture that looks elegant from a distance but suggests physical negotiation up close. Kokoshnik tiaras weren't designed for comfort. They were designed to be visible across the length of a ballroom, to maintain their shape in photographs, to communicate that the woman wearing one had the physical discipline to sustain the discomfort. The jewellery doesn't move with the body moves around the jewellery, and that restriction is part of the statement being made. No one will tell you exactly how much the Vladimir tiara weighs, but the photographs tell you enough. The base is wide, the diamonds are large, and the frame is substantial enough to support interchangeable drops, pearls or emeralds, depending on the occasion. When the structure is assembled with the emerald drops attached, the weight increases significantly. The tiara doesn't sit lightly on the head, it occupies it. Grand Duchess Vladimir of Russia commissioned it before the revolution, and after her death it was smuggled out of Russia, eventually purchased by Queen Mary, who had it adapted to accommodate the removable drops. That adaptation added mechanical weight, hinges, settings, the infrastructure required to swap stones. Elizabeth II wore it regularly, almost always with the pearl drops, which are lighter than the emeralds but still substantial. The emerald version appears less frequently in the photographic record, and the reason isn't purely aesthetic. The additional weight makes it harder to wear for extended periods. What's visible in photographs is the way the wearer's posture adjusts. Shoulders held slightly back, chin level, no sudden movements. The Vladimir tiara demands that stillness. It's too heavy for casual gesture, too prominent for subtle motion. The jewellery dictates the body language, and in formal settings, state banquets, diplomatic receptions, that dictation is acceptable. Outside those contexts, the tiara would read as costume or constraint. It requires ceremony to make sense of its own excess. Diana called it the headache tiara. She wasn't being dramatic. The Cambridge Lover's Knot tiara has a reputation for being painful to wear. This isn't speculation. Diana, Princess of Wales, mentioned the headaches it caused in documented conversations. The tiara features 19 hanging pearls suspended from diamond arches, each pearl adding individual weight that shifts with movement. The structure is top-heavy. The pearls, each the size of a small marble, dangle on short chains that swing slightly with any motion of the head. The cumulative effect is weight distributed unevenly, concentrated at points across the forehead and temples. The tiara was made for Queen Mary, copying an earlier design owned by her grandmother, the Duchess of Cambridge. Mary wore it frequently, but Mary was trained in the physical discipline of Victorian royal protocol, which normalised discomfort as a condition of status. Diana wore it early in her marriage, before she understood how to minimise movement while wearing heavy jewellery. Later photographs show her favouring lighter tiaras. Catherine, Princess of Wales, has worn it occasionally, but always with the careful posture of someone aware of the weight. The pearl drops are the problem. Remove them and the tiara becomes structurally simpler, but the design loses its signature element. The hanging pearls are what make the piece distinctive, and they're also what make it uncomfortable. That tension between visual identity and physical strain is characteristic of ceremonial jewellery. The discomfort isn't incidental, it's structural, built into the design at the same moment as the beauty. Queen Mary's fringe tiara is constructed from 61 articulated diamond bars, each one set to stand vertically. The bars don't curve with the shape of the head. They form a stiff crescent that projects upward and outward, creating the fringe effect that gives the tiara its name. The diamonds catch light from multiple angles, which makes the piece dazzling under formal lighting. It also makes the tiara rigid, inflexible, and uncomfortable for anything beyond short ceremonial appearances. The articulation, the mechanical joints that allow each bar to move independently, was meant to provide some flexibility, but the engineering is Victorian, designed for display rather than prolonged wear. The tiara was adapted from a necklace, which explains why the structure feels more appropriate draped across fabric than worn on a human head. Mary wore it often. Elizabeth II wore it on her wedding day in 1947, though she later favoured tiaras with more forgiving structures. Princess Anne wore it for her wedding in 1973, and Princess Beatrice borrowed it for her 2020 wedding, wearing the same veil Elizabeth II had worn decades earlier. Each time the tiara appears in photographs, the wearer's neck is held straight. The vertical bars require that posture. Tilt the head, and the bars tilt with it, disrupting the visual line. The tiara imposes its geometry on the body wearing it, and in ceremonial contexts, weddings, formal portraits, that imposition is part of the aesthetic. Outside ceremony, it would simply be a constraint. Elizabeth II wore one tiara more than any other in her 70-year reign. It was also one of the heaviest she owned. The Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara sits low and heavy on the forehead, its base broad enough to require significant structural support. The tiara was a wedding gift to Mary of Teck in 1893, commissioned by a committee of aristocratic women who contributed funds. The diamonds are large, the platinum framework is dense, and the overall construction prioritizes visual impact over wearability. Mary wore it constantly, but Mary wore everything constantly. She treated jewellery as armour, and discomfort was irrelevant to the message being sent. Elizabeth II wore it more than any other tiara in her collection, which says something about her tolerance for weight. The tiara appears on British currency, in state portraits, in thousands of official photographs. It's visually synonymous with her reign, but it's also one of the heaviest tiaras she owned, and the photographs reflect that weight. Her head is always level. Her neck is always extended. The posture required to wear the tiara became part of her public image. The carefully maintained composure that read as dignity but required physical endurance. The tiara was designed for gaslit ballrooms and formal receptions where women sat more than they moved. Modern ceremonial use, standing for long periods, walking in processions, attending multi-hour events, pushes the design beyond its intended context. The jewellery still works visually. It photographs beautifully. But the body wearing it is performing a kind of physical negotiation that the original users of the tiara never anticipated. The discomfort is historical, built into the piece by designers who assumed stillness as a baseline condition of aristocratic life. The Delhi Durbar tiara was worn once at the ceremony it was built for, and then almost never again. The weight had something to do with that. The tiara was constructed for Queen Mary to wear at the 1911 Delhi Durbar, a ceremony designed to proclaim George V as Emperor of India. The event was theatre on an imperial scale, and the jewellery was built to match. The tiara features Cambridge and Delhi Durbar emeralds, large cabochon-cut stones set in a scrolling platinum frame. The emeralds alone weigh significantly. Add the supporting diamonds and the platinum structure, and the tiara becomes one of the heaviest ceremonial pieces in the collection. Mary wore it once, at the Durbar, and then occasionally afterward for state events. The tiara wasn't designed for comfort. It was designed to be visible from a distance, to photograph well, to communicate the wealth and power of the British Empire at a moment when that power was being ritually performed. The ceremony required Mary to sit still for hours while wearing the tiara and the rest of the ceremonial regalia. Movement wasn't expected, endurance was. Elizabeth II inherited the tiara, but rarely wore it. The piece is associated too strongly with imperial pageantry. and as the empire dissolved, the tiara's symbolism became complicated, but the weight never changed. The emeralds are still heavy, the structure is still rigid, and wearing it still requires the same physical discipline Mary demonstrated in 1911. The tiara exists now primarily as a historical object, displayed behind glass, preserved as evidence of a ceremonial moment that required jewellery too uncomfortable for regular use. The Brazilian aquamarine parure was a coronation gift to Elizabeth II from the people of Brazil in 1953. The set includes a tiara, necklace, earrings, and bracelet, all featuring large aquamarine stones surrounded by diamonds. The aquamarines are substantial, each one a significant weight, and the tiara holds the largest stones at eye level. The necklace adds more. Wear the full parure, and the cumulative weight is considerable. Elizabeth II wore the set occasionally for state banquets, but it never became a regular choice. The tiara is top-heavy, the necklace sits close to the collarbone, and together they require a carefully balanced posture. The aquamarines are pale, which makes them visually delicate, but the physical reality is dense stone set in heavy metal. The parure works best when the wearer remains relatively still, seated at a formal dinner, standing for a receiving line, moving slowly through a ceremonial procession. The jewellery was designed to honour Brazil's gift, but it was also designed for a specific kind of diplomatic event. Formal, controlled, photographed from a distance. Wear the parure in a less formal context, and it overwhelms. The stones are too large, the structure too formal, the weight too present. The jewellery requires ceremony to justify its own scale. Without that frame, it becomes excessive in the most literal sense, too much for the context, physically and visually. The Burmese ruby tiara was made for Elizabeth II in 1973, using rubies that had been a wedding gift from the people of Burma. The design is spiky, almost crown-like, with 96 rubies set among diamonds in a series of rose motifs that project upward. The rubies are Burmese in origin, which historically made them valuable. Burmese rubies are considered the finest in the world, prized for their deep red colour. But rubies are also dense. 96 of them, even in smaller sizes, add significant weight. The tiara structure is rigid, the rose motifs don't flex, and the vertical orientation means the weight sits high on the head. Elizabeth II wore it occasionally, usually for evening events, but it never became a frequent choice. The tiara is visually striking. The red rubies against diamonds create strong contrast, but the physical reality is a piece that demands stillness. Turn the head too quickly, and the momentum lags. Lower the chin, and the geometry shifts. The tiara was commissioned at a time when Elizabeth II had access to decades' worth of existing tiaras, many of them lighter and more comfortable. The decision to create a new piece using the Burmese rubies was diplomatic, honouring the original gift. But the resulting tiara is formal, heavy, and best suited to contexts where movement is minimal and ceremony provides the necessary frame. Outside those contexts, the tiara's design, sharp, crown-like, visually aggressive, reads as costume rather than jewellery. It needs the ballroom, the lighting, the distance. It needs ceremony to make sense of its own intensity. There's a version of the Vladimir tiara so heavy that it's almost never worn. The sapphires made sure of that. The Grand Duchess Vladimir's sapphire tiara, often called the Russian sapphire tiara, features 15 large sapphires that can be swapped into the Vladimir tiara frame. The sapphires are cabochon cut, which means they're rounded rather than faceted, and each one is substantial in size. When the sapphires are installed, the tiara becomes one of the heaviest pieces in the collection. The sapphires add weight at multiple points, distributed across the frame, and the cumulative effect is jewellery that requires serious physical effort to wear. The sapphires came into British royal hands through complicated circumstances involving the Russian Revolution, the smuggling of jewels, and eventual purchase by Queen Mary. Mary wore the tiara occasionally, always with the pearl drops, and the sapphire drops remained largely unused. Elizabeth II wore the sapphire version rarely, so rarely that many photographs show the Vladimir tiara with pearls instead. The sapphires exist as an option, but the option is too heavy for regular use. When the sapphire drops are attached, the tiara changes character. It becomes heavier, more imposing, visually darker. The sapphires read as serious jewellery, formal, almost severe. The structure demands absolute stillness. The weight is too much for casual gesture, and the visual intensity is too much for informal settings. The sapphire Vladimir tiara needs ceremony, not just for aesthetic coherence, but for physical justification. The discomfort it causes only makes sense when worn as part of a ritual that values symbolic presence over bodily ease. The pattern holds across all of these pieces. They were designed for a world where ceremony provided not just the aesthetic context, but the physical justification for discomfort. Where jewellery could be heavy because movement was minimal. Where rigidity in design matched rigidity in protocol. Where the bodies wearing these objects were expected to absorb the strain without acknowledgement, because acknowledging it would break the illusion that monarchy is effortless. That illusion is still being performed, the tiaras are still being worn, but the discomfort is structural, built into the pieces at the moment of creation, and it persists because the ceremonial contexts that justify it persist. Once you start noticing this tension, it's hard to look at royal images the same way. Every photograph begins to feel staged, every crown feels calculated, and the question isn't whether these jewels were uncomfortable, it's how much discomfort was considered acceptable to maintain the illusion.